Hello and welcome to Conversations With, our monthly series of informal and enlightening conversations between the leading edge teacher and author, Jim Self, and some of today's most progressive and connected teachers, channels, and authors. Now, here's our host, Jim Self.
Hello, welcome. Nice to be here with you. Blessings. This is a very exciting conversation we're going to have. You know, every month we have some very interesting people. But this month there's a man that I've been watching from afar for a long time and very excited about the kind of work he does, Jonathan Goldman. Jonathan's an international author on sound healing. He's a pioneer in the field of harmonics. He's an author of a number of books, Healing Sounds, Shifting Frequencies, The Lost Chord. He's one of his best-selling books, The 7 Secrets of Sound, Healing, Chakras, and Frequency, of which he's a co-author with his wife, Andy. And his latest book is the one that really has caught my attention, The Divine Name, the sounds of the divine name of God. He's won numbers of awards, the 2011 Visionary Award for Best Alternative Healing Book. And Jonathan's also the Director of Sound Healers Association and the President of Spirit Music, Inc. He's a Grammy nominee. He's created numerous best-selling, award-winning recordings and is a double-winning recipient of the Visionary Award for the Best Healing Meditation Albums and Album of the Year. Jonathan's a lecturer and a member of the International Society of Music Medicine, and much, much more. But what interests me to a great extent about Jonathan is, you know, in my work I talk a lot about a person's purpose is 100% about their personal growth and 100% about service to others. And when you can put those two 100% in the same place and begin to demonstrate it, that's very magical. You know, and I also talk about how each one of us is a teacher and a healer and a leader. And watching somebody put all of that together very articulately in a smooth manner, in a very harmonic resonance, is really quite an adventure in watching someone's life. And Jonathan's one of these people who has put it all together and is very kind and generous. So it's exciting to kind of be here with Jonathan Goldman. So, Jonathan, welcome. Very nice of you to be present and be available for this conversation.
Jim, it is my great pleasure to be conversing with you, and thank you so much for that wonderful and beautiful introduction. Thank you.
Yeah, very accurate also. So there's a lot that we could talk about, and I want to kind of get to the place of talking about this body of work that you're doing around the divine name. But let's start from someplace real simple, like vowels in the speech and in the sound toning, and how that begins to be harmonic and how you take it into toning and things like that. So you're the master. Why don't you kind of lead into that, and let's see how we can get to that divine name and the impact that has for every one of us.
Wow. Thank you. I'd like to just always, regardless of who I'm talking with, I always like to start at the very, very beginning, which is just the idea of how and why sound is so important and how sound may be used for healing. So can I go into a bit of a discussion on that one for just a moment?
Absolutely.
Because, you know, as you and your listeners know, if you examine the basic tenets of the various spiritual traditions on the planet, you find a commonality in their understanding that life, the universe, and everything was created solely through sound. In the beginning was the Word, and the Lord said, "Let there be light," sound preceding light. And in various different traditions throughout the planet, from the Tibetan to the Hindu tradition where they say Nada Brahman, the world is sound, to all these different traditions, you find a commonality in their understanding that sound is the major creative force on the planet. And now we have our quantum physicists talking about things like superstring theory and the fact that everything is in a state of vibration. So our ancient mystics and our modern physicists are now in agreement that everything is in vibration, that everything is sound. So to start at the very, very beginning, just to perceive of the fact that sound is literally a waveform and that everything that is in vibration can be perceived of as being sound. This goes from the electrons moving around the nucleus of an atom to planets and distant galaxies moving around their suns. Everything is in a state of vibration and therefore potentially at least creating a sound. And this, of course, goes for our body. Every organ, every bone, every tissue, every part of our body is in a state of vibration. And when we are in a state of health, we are creating this, if you like, overall harmonic of health. And, we say we're in sound health. We're very much like an orchestra that, if you like, is playing the symphony of the self or the suite of the self, whatever name you want to give it. But then I, ponder this question. What happens if the second violin player in this orchestra loses their sheet music? They begin to play out of ease, out of harmony. They're playing the wrong notes. Pretty soon the entire string section sounds off. Pretty soon the entire orchestra sounds off. And this is, if you like, akin to a part of our body vibrating out of its natural, what is called resonant frequency, out of its natural harmony. It's vibrating out of ease. And if we say it's out of ease, people call it diseased. And the idea of using sound as a healing modality is simply that what if we could give this string player back their sheet music? What if we could somehow project the correct resonant frequency back into that part of the body or the physical or the etheric field that was vibrating out of harmony? And that's the basic idea of using sound as a healing modality. And I'd just like to start from there, then to take it to the next level because, as you mentioned, I have a lot of CDs and personally, I have a lot of different toys, different instruments for using sound as a healing modality, tuning forks, Tibetan bowls, you name it. But I perceive that the greatest instrument for healing is our voice.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Everybody has, and everybody has got a voice. And one of the things that I, if I may for just a moment, is just to sort of clarify something which a lot of people, when I mention sound healing, they oftentimes think of Mozart or Beethoven or something like that. And really what we're talking about here is sound, which is just like, a vibration. It can be a single tone. And, you don't have to be a musician. You don't have to be a trained singer. You don't have to be any sort of, musician in order to be able to use your own self-created sound for healing. And just, this is, scientifically, and I love to start from science and then get into the more esoteric. When you make a just simple sound, such as a vowel sound, which we're going to begin to discuss, or even humming, what happens is that you get an increase in your oxygen. You get your levels of melatonin being increased. There's a reduced level of stress-related hormones. There's a release of endorphins, which are those wonderful self-created opiates that work as natural pain relievers. You get increased levels of nitric oxide, not nitrous oxide, which is what you get in the dentist's office. That's great stuff, too. But nitric oxide, which is a vascular dilator, which is a molecule that's associated with the promotion of healing. And finally, when you make sound with other people, you get the release of oxytocin, which is the trust hormone. So if you make sound with other people, all those boundaries that oftentimes, and barriers that keep you from being as one dissipate. And I think that is just so wonderful and so beautiful.
Yeah, and this is why so many people join choirs and get into groups and they may be in an uncomfortable place for their day, but when they get done with their singing or their group in resonance, they walk away happy.
Indeed. It just, it makes you feel good. It makes you feel good. And, you were asking about vowels before, which are one of my, if you like, favorite subjects. And one of the reasons that I work with the vowel sounds is very, very simple. The vowel sounds are found in many, many different traditions. And actually, they're found in all the different traditions, but they're considered sacred in many, many different traditions, including the Kabbalistic tradition and many, many more. And they are unto themselves, if you like, they're not only non-denominational, which means that you can make an ah sound and nobody's going to look at you and point a finger and go, that person is a heathen, but literally they are trans-denominational, which means that they're found in all these different traditions. So I like to work with the vowel sounds because they're so very, very, very powerful, and yet at the same time, I can introduce people who may be, shall we say, interested fundamentally in a particular spiritual path, and they might find that making a mantra from a different tradition is contrary to their belief system, so they won't engage in it, but nobody's not going to go, ah.
Correct, yeah.
So, this is, one of the basic fields. So about 30 years ago, when I first began doing this research in terms of using sound and music for healing, and particularly of using the human voice, I basically began researching the vowel sounds to resonate, first of all, the energy centers of the body, known as the chakras. And I know that your listeners are well aware of this. And what's so very, very interesting is that the idea of using the vowel sounds to resonate the body goes back probably thousands and thousands of years ago.
Sure.
Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, talked about the ancient Egyptian priests having knowledge of these 7 sacred vowel sounds to resonate their energy centers. So this is really, it's really not anything new. It's simply, if you like, a new rediscovery of some ancient and very, very powerful principles of using sound.
Yeah. When I listen to various musics, group musics, choral musics, musics that people sing in churches over the years, what I noticed is it isn't the words, it's the vowels that get sung as notes that get highlighted, and as I've watched people, and I remember as a little kid going to a very fundamental church and not having any clue as why I was in the church, except every time they sang, the colors would change all through the room. But I would watch these A's and E's and I's as they are pronounced in the words. It wasn't the word, it was the vowels. And people would get high on the vowels, even though they would call it spiritual and religious and all those words that we put on it. But so what you're saying is clearly my observation as a little kid, and I couldn't understand. Once they stopped singing, I was like, well, what are we here for? Never made any sense to me at that point. But it's consistent with what you're saying here, I think.
Right. And what's so interesting about the vowel sounds is, a lot of the really sacred structures that were built in ancient times, when people intone these elongated vowel sounds, whether it's an E or an Ah or an Oo or an O, what happens is that there seems to be a resonance that occurs, and also you hear these sounds within sounds that are called harmonics. And I know we're moving up to the harmonics, but you get the harmonics really being amplified through these sacred structures that were built by the master masons and all these other spiritual traditional people.
Very much, very much. And we'll get here in a little bit, but a lot of those sacred geometric structures have references in sound tones.
Yes, no question about that. It's, I believe that they really knew what they were doing. And, of course, a lot of the different sacred cathedrals and whatnot were oftentimes built over, dare I say the word, pagan sacred ritual sites.
Yes.
But there were energetic vortices that were basically, built upon, but the energy is still there.
Sure, and the mathematics of sound and the mathematics of constructing a building are the same mathematics.
Yeah, exactly. I probably should sort of mention what harmonics are.
Good.
And this, of course, is, folks, we have now switched from going very, very simply into sound as a waveform into probably PhD level, so I'm going to do my very, very best to describe this. And tonight's presentation is called On Changing the World with the Color of Sound, the Power of Harmonics and the Divine Name, which I love. And
nice.
What are harmonics, right? Harmonics are the color of sound. When any note is struck, what actually occurs is that there is this simultaneous, multifoliate, if you like, conglomerate of sounds that occur, and they're all indeed geometrically related, and they're called harmonics, so that if a note, let's say, is vibrating at 100 cycles a second, that's called its frequency. The harmonics would be 200 cycles a second, 300 cycles a second, 400 cycles a second, 500, 600, 700, going on into infinity. And different instruments and our voices actually have different harmonics that are most stressed, and these are called formants. And the vowel sounds also have particular harmonics that are most stressed, so that you can sing a particular vowel sound and you'll hear an overtone or a harmonic, same thing, that occurs. So it sounds like there are almost two or more notes or voices simultaneously singing at the same time. It's, I think I first got into it simply because I got mesmerized by the phenomenology of harmonics and how cool it is once you first begin to hear it, and then all of a sudden, you can begin to make them yourself. Yeah.
And let's take that right from there into these resonant vibrations of harmonics as it relates to healing, because that's where you've got an enormous amount of expertise. And as you begin to direct those harmonics and resonant tones and vibrations with certain, I'm going to get lost real quick here, but certain vibrational patterns, the chakras will resonate to different vibrational patterns, and so will organs. But isn't there a fundamental piece that comes into play here also around a belief? If I believe I can heal myself, I can heal myself. And if I can hold my attention on and intention on healing myself, kind of that law of attraction opens up. But once I start to put sound currents and sound frequencies and vibrations into that belief, miracles begin to happen, is my observation as a healer for the last 30 years. I believe that probably is similar to your experience.
Well, Jib, can I tell a story, and can we step into the Wayback Machine and go back around 30 years? Whoa.
I don't know if I can remember that long ago.
All right. I'm not sure I can either, but there are certain incidences that occur in my life, and this is one of them. I was sitting in front of a computer, and this goes so far back that the computer was using a DOS operating system, and as far as I remember, it was kind of like a brown screen with amber letters. And what I was doing was, you remember that, or maybe not, but...
No, I don't remember those.
No, me neither. It's just, I made it up. Okay. And I was literally collecting these. Jim, I had probably a pile of papers that were 2 feet high, and they were different systems of using sound and music that I had been collecting for a master's degree program that I'd been doing at Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I remember I was literally in a state of intellectual angst with my head in my hand because I had all these different systems from all these different people, spiritual paths, etc., that use sound for healing. And it was all great. I believed that they all worked, but they didn't necessarily concur or agree with each other. Spiritual Master X would use one mantra to resonate a chakra, and Spiritual Master Y would use a completely different one. I'm going, oh my goodness, how can this be? Scientist A would be using one set of frequencies for something, and Scientist B doing something totally different. And so I'm sitting there going, how can this be? Well, how can this be? There's got to be an answer. And all of a sudden I hear this inner voice, and it says, it is not only the frequency of the sound that creates its effect, it is also the intention of the person making and receiving the sound. And Jim, I remember writing out the formula, frequency plus intent equals healing. And I wrote that out probably 30 or more years ago, and I feel that it is more valid today than ever.
Sure.
If you enjoyed this episode of Conversations With, join Jim Self on the third Tuesday of every month on the Awakening Zone Network for more stimulating discussions with leading-edge teachers, authors, and channels. If you're looking for free tools for your personal and spiritual growth, if you want to be who you came here to be, visit masteringalchemy.com, where you can learn more about Jim, his work, and future guests on this show. We also have a Facebook fan page, Mastering Alchemy with Jim Self. Our theme song is Hands of Love by Barry Goldstein. May you experience laughter and grace on your journey